The morning sun painted golden streaks across the small apartment as Chloe Martinez stood before her mirror, adjusting her navy blazer for the 10th time. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her dark hair, trying to calm the butterflies dancing in her stomach. Today was the day she had been preparing for since graduating 6 months ago, her interview at Sterling Communications, the most prestigious marketing firm in the city. "You've got this, Mia," her grandmother Rita called. From the kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee and toast filling the tiny space they shared. At 72, Rita Martinez had raised Chloe since she was 8 years old. Working double shifts at the hospital cafeteria to put her granddaughter through college, the wrinkles around her eyes deepened when she smiled, and her silver hair was always perfectly pinned back despite the early hour. Chloe grabbed her leather portfolio, a graduation gift from Rita that had cost more than they could afford, and kissed her grandmother's cheek. "The interview is at 10 sharp. Mr. Thompson specifically said they don't tolerate lateness," she said, checking her phone. It was already 8:30, and she needed to catch 2 buses to reach downtown. That company would be lucky to have. "You," Rita said, pressing a travel mug of coffee into Chloe's hands. "Remember what I always tell you, kindness opens more doors than ambition ever could." Chloe smiled at her grandmother's wisdom, though today she needed ambition more than kindness. This job at Sterling Communications wasn't just an opportunity. It was her ticket to finally giving Rita the comfortable life she deserved after years of sacrifice. The journey downtown, the first bus arrived on time. Chloe found a seat near the window, reviewing her notes one final time. She had memorized every detail about Sterling Communications. From their recent campaign for luxury watches to their expansion into social media marketing, this wasn't just any job, it was her dream position as a junior marketing coordinator. With room for advancement, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Nina Foster. "Break a leg today. You're going to crush this interview. Coffee celebration tonight regardless of what happens." Chloe smiled, grateful for Nina's unwavering support. They had been roommates until last month when Chloe moved back in with Rita to save money. Nina understood the financial pressure better than anyone, working double shifts at the downtown coffee shop just to afford her studio apartment. As the bus wound through the city streets, Chloe watched the neighborhoods change from residential to commercial. Glass towers reflected the morning light, and people in expensive suits walked with purpose along the sidewalks. Soon, she would be one of them, a professional with a steady income and benefits. The transfer to the second bus went smoothly, and Chloe checked her watch. 9:15, perfect timing to arrive at Sterling Communications with 15 minutes to spare for final preparations. An unexpected detour 3 blocks from her destination, Chloe's bus came to an abrupt stop. Traffic had backed up completely, with cars honking and drivers looking frustrated. She pressed her face to the window and saw the problem. A sleek black Mercedes had broken down in the right lane, causing a massive bottleneck during rush hour. Chloe checked her phone anxiously. 9:40. She could still make it if the traffic cleared in the next few minutes. But each passing second made her more nervous. Other passengers were grumbling about the delay, some already getting off to walk through the bus window. She could see a man in an expensive charcoal suit standing beside the Mercedes, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from a distance, she could tell he was frustrated. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and he kept running his hand through it as he paced beside his disabled vehicle. James Harrison, though Chloe didn't know his name yet, was indeed frustrated. The founder and CEO of Harrison Technologies was supposed to be at his office for a crucial board meeting in 20 minutes. His usual driver had called in sick, forcing him to drive himself in his backup car, which had apparently chosen the worst possible moment to break down. "Carlos, I need you to send another car immediately," James spoke into his phone, his voice tight with stress. "The engine just died, and I'm blocking traffic in the middle of downtown." The choice that changes everything. Watching the scene unfold, Chloe felt a familiar tug in her chest. Rita had always taught her to help others when she could, even when it wasn't convenient. The man looked genuinely distressed, and traffic was getting worse by the minute. She glanced at her watch, again 9:40-2. If she got off the bus now to help, she would definitely be late for her interview. Mr. Thompson had been crystal clear about punctuality during their phone screening, but something about the man's situation resonated with her. Maybe it was the way he kept checking his watch, or how he apologized to every honking driver who passed. He seemed genuinely sorry for the inconvenience he was causing. Before she could talk herself out of it, Chloe stood up and made her way to the front of the bus. "Excuse me, I need to get off here," she told the driver. "Lady, we're stuck in traffic. You sure you want to walk from here?" the driver asked, gesturing to the chaos outside. "I'm sure," Chloe replied, stepping off the bus into the warm morning air. She could hear the driver muttering about crazy passengers as the doors closed behind her, dodging between stopped cars. Chloe approached the stranded Mercedes. The man was still on his phone, his back turned to her as he explained his situation to someone on the other end. "Excuse me, Chloe?" called out, raising her voice over the honking horns. "Do you need some help?" See a young woman in professional attire approaching him. His first thought was how unusual it was for someone to stop and offer assistance in the middle of a traffic jam. His second thought was how kind her brown eyes looked, despite the obvious concern on her face.
"That's very nice of you to offer,"
James replied, ending his call. "But I don't want to make you late for wherever you're going. You look like you have somewhere important to be." Chloe glanced at her watch. 9-40-5. "I do have an important appointment, but maybe I can help quickly." "What seems to be the problem?" James gestured helplessly at his car. "The engine just died. No warning, no strange sounds, it just stopped running. I've called for assistance, but they won't be here for at least 30 minutes. Unexpected skills, Chloe set down her portfolio on the sidewalk and approached the Mercedes. "Mind if I take a look?"
"Oh,
My uncle owned a garage when I was growing up. It taught me a few things about cars." James raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical but impressed by her confidence. "Really? In that outfit?" "The suit is new, but the knowledge isn't." Chloe replied with a small smile, already moving toward the hood. "Pop the hood for me." As James released the hood latch from inside the car, Chloe rolled up her sleeve slightly and lifted the hood. The engine bay of the Mercedes was immaculate and complex, but she had seen enough car troubles with her Uncle Miguel to recognize common problems. She leaned over the engine, was careful not to let her blazer touch anything oily, and examined the various components. After a moment, she spotted the issue, a loose battery terminal that had vibrated free, cutting power to the engine. "I think I found your problem," Chloe announced, pointing to the disconnected cable. "Your negative battery terminal came loose. It's probably from all the stop-and-go traffic this morning." James peered over her shoulder, impressed despite himself. "Are you serious? It's really that simple?" "Sometimes the simplest problems cause the biggest headaches," Chloe replied, carefully reconnecting the terminal. Her manicured nails, done. Specially for the interview, scraped slightly against the metal, but she didn't care. "Try starting it now." James slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The Mercedes purred to life immediately, its engine running smoothly, as if nothing had happened. He got out of the car with a look of amazement and gratitude. "I can't believe it," he said, shaking his head. "You just saved me from a very bad morning. How can I thank you?" The cost of kindness, Chloe wiped her hands on a tissue from her purse and checked her watch. Her heart sank as she saw the time, 9-50-8. Her interview was in 2 minutes and she was still 6 blocks away. "Actually, you don't need to thank me," she said, picking up her portfolio with slightly trembling hands. "I'm just glad I could help." James noticed her distress immediately. "You're late for something important, aren't you? 'Cause you stopped to help me." "I have a job interview in 2 minutes," Chloe admitted, trying to keep the disappointment out of her voice. "But it's fine. There'll be other opportunities." Even as she said the words, she knew they weren't true. Sterling Communications received hundreds of applications for every position. This had been her one shot, and she had chosen to help a stranger instead of securing her future. "Let me drive you," James offered immediately. "It's the least I can do." Chloe hesitated. Getting in a car with a complete stranger went against every safety rule she had ever learned. But something about this man seemed trustworthy, and she was desperate. "I don't even know your name," she said, though she was already moving toward the passenger door. "James," he replied, opening the door for her. "And you are?" "Chloe Martinez," she answered, sliding into the luxurious leather seat. "The interview is at Sterling Communications on 5th Street. James's expression flickered with something surprise, recognition, or perhaps concern. But it passed so quickly that Chloe didn't notice. He knew Sterling Communications well. In fact, he had been considering acquiring them as part of his expansion strategy. Racing against time, James drove with skillful precision through the downtown traffic. Taking shortcuts that only someone familiar with the city would know, the Mercedes glided smoothly through the streets as Chloe directed him to the Sterling Communications building. So what kind of job interview is this? James asked, genuinely curious about the woman who had sacrificed her own opportunity to help him. Marketing coordinator position, Chloe replied, checking her appearance in the visor mirror. It's my dream job, actually. I've been preparing for months. What makes it your dream job? James pressed, stealing glances at her as he navigated. Traffic. Chloe's face lit up as she talked about marketing strategy, consumer psychology, and brand development. James found himself genuinely impressed by her knowledge and passion. This wasn't just someone looking for any job, she truly understood and loved the field. Here we are, James announced as they pulled up in front of the gleaming Sterling Communications building. The clock on the dashboard read 10-0-7. The crushing reality, Chloe rushed through the lobby of Sterling Communications, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she hurried to the elevator. The receptionist, a stern woman in her 50s, looked at her with obvious disapproval when she approached the front desk at 10:09. I'm here for my interview with Mr. Thompson, Chloe said, slightly out of breath. I'm Chloe Martinez. No, I'm a few minutes late. But there was traffic, and Mr. Thompson specifically instructed that anyone arriving after 10 o'clock would not be seen. The receptionist interrupted coldly. He left for another meeting 5 minutes ago. Chloe felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Is there any way to reschedule? I was helping someone with a car emergency, and Mr. Thompson doesn't reschedule. The woman replied, not even looking up from her computer. Good day, Miss Martinez. Standing in the pristine lobby, surrounded by awards and accolades for marketing campaigns she had studied religiously, Chloe felt her dreams crumbling around her. The portfolio in her hand suddenly felt heavy, filled with preparation that would never be seen. Unexpected kindness. As Chloe walked slowly back toward the building exit, she saw James waiting by his Mercedes. He had parked illegally in a loading zone, apparently unconcerned about the potential ticket. How did it go? He asked, though her expression already told him the answer. They wouldn't see me, Chloe replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I was 9 minutes late, and apparently that's unforgivable in their world. James felt a surge of anger towards Sterling Communications, though he kept it hidden. Any company that would dismiss someone over 9 minutes, especially someone who had been late because of helping others, clearly didn't understand the value of character. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. This is my fault. You were helping me when you should have been protecting your own interests. Chloe shook her head. I made the choice. My grandmother always says that kindness is more important than personal gain. I guess today I proved I actually believe that. James studied her face, seeing no trace of regret despite her obvious disappointment. This woman had sacrificed a major opportunity for a complete stranger and wasn't even angry about it. In his world of ruthless business dealings and calculated decisions, such genuine altruism was almost unimaginable. Can I at least buy you coffee? James offered. I know it doesn't make up for what happened, but I'd like to do something. Chloe looked at this kind stranger who had driven her to her interview and was now offering comfort in her disappointment. Despite everything that had gone wrong, she found herself smiling. Coffee sounds perfect, she said. I could use a friend right now. They walked away from Sterling Communications together. Neither of them realized that this moment of disappointment would eventually become the foundation of something far more valuable than any job could ever be. Sometimes the most important doors open only after others have closed. And sometimes helping a stranger on a busy street is the first step toward an extraordinary future. The small downtown cafe buzzed with morning energy as James and Chloe found a quiet corner table by the window. The aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filled the air, and soft jazz music played in the background. Chloe wrapped her hands around her warm mug, finding comfort in its simple pleasure after the morning's disappointment. So, tell me about yourself, Chloe Martinez, James said, genuinely curious about the woman who had changed his morning so dramatically. He had removed his suit jacket, looking more relaxed despite the expensive watch on his wrist and the subtle signs of wealth that Chloe didn't notice. Not much to tell, Chloe replied with a self-deprecating smile. Recent college graduate, living with my grandmother, and apparently unemployable according to Sterling Communications. I doubt that's true, James said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Anyone who can diagnose a car problem in a business suit and chooses to help a stranger over their own interests clearly has valuable qualities. Chloe studied his face, noticing the sincere interest in his eyes. There was something different about James, a confidence that came from more than just good looks or expensive clothes. What about you? What do you do when you're not having car trouble and traffic jams? James hesitated for a moment. He was so accustomed to people knowing exactly who he was that this anonymity felt both strange and refreshing. I work in technology, he said, which was technically true. Problem solving, team management, that sort of thing. Sounds important, Chloe observed, noting his quality suit and the way he carried himself. Must be successful at it. I've been fortunate, James replied modestly. But success means different things to different people. This morning, for instance, you were more successful than I was. How so? I'm the one who missed my interview. You succeeded at being the kind of person your grandmother raised you to be, James said softly. That's worth more than any job. Chloe felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. In a morning full of disappointment, the stranger's understanding meant more than she could express. A new reality. 3 weeks had passed since the fateful morning, and Chloe's life had settled into a routine she hadn't planned. Working part-time at Morrison's bookstore downtown and tutoring high school students in the evenings, she was barely making ends meet. The bookstore job paid minimum wage, but she loved being surrounded by stories and helping customers find their next great read. Any word from Sterling Communications? Asked Nina Foster as she wiped down tables at Brew and Bean, the coffee shop where she worked. Nina's auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her green apron bore coffee stains from the busy morning rush. Nothing, Chloe replied, shelving returned books in the store's cozy fiction section. I've sent 3 follow-up emails and called twice. They won't even let me reschedule. Nina frowned, pausing in her cleaning. Their loss. You would have revolutionized their marketing department. Thanks for the confidence boost, Chloe said, though she couldn't hide the disappointment that still lingered. That job at Sterling Communications had represented everything she had worked toward: financial stability, career growth, and the ability to finally take care of Rita the way her grandmother had taken care of her. Speaking of confidence boosts, Nina said with a mischievous grin, there's this guy who's been coming in here almost every day asking about you. Chloe looked up from the book she was arranging, asking about me. What guy? Tall, dark hair, expensive suits, gorgeous smile. Says his name is James and that you two met a few weeks ago. He always orders a large coffee and asks if I've seen you lately. Chloe felt her heart skip a beat. She had thought about James often since their coffee meeting, wondering about the kind stranger who had shown her such unexpected compassion. But she had assumed their paths would never cross again. He seems really interested in seeing you again, Nina continued, enjoying her friend's obvious reaction. I told him you usually come by on Wednesday afternoons to study, Nina Foster. You didn't, Chloe said, though she wasn't entirely upset about it. I absolutely did. Life's too short not to give nice guys a chance to find you. Chance meetings Wednesday afternoon found Chloe at her usual table in Brew and Bean, surrounded by 8 marketing textbooks and job applications. She was determined to keep her skills sharp while searching for new opportunities. Even if it meant studying on her own time, the familiar chime of the door made her look up, and her breath caught when she saw James enter the cafe. He spotted her immediately, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. Chloe, he said, approaching her table with 2 coffee cups in hand. What a pleasant surprise. Mind if I join you? Of course, she replied quickly, closing her textbook on consumer behavior. Though I should warn you, I'm not the best company today. Job hunting is depressing work. James set one of the coffees in front of her, a caramel macchiato, her favorite. Though she couldn't remember telling him that, still no luck with interviews. A few calls, but nothing promising, Chloe admitted. Turns out being late to the most prestigious firm in the city doesn't look good on your reputation. Their reputation should be the one suffering, James said with unexpected intensity. Any company that judges candidates by 9 minutes instead of character doesn't deserve talent like yours. Chloe studied his face, touched by his fierce defense. Of her? You barely know me, James. How can you be so sure about my character? Because I've seen who you are when it matters, he replied simply. That morning in traffic, you had every reason to walk past my car, and protect your own interests. Instead, you chose to help a complete stranger. It tells me everything I need to know." They talked for over an hour, the conversation flowing naturally from career aspirations to family stories to shared interests. James listened intently as Chloe described her grandmother's sacrifices, her own dreams of financial independence, and her passion for creative marketing strategies. "You know," James said thoughtfully as their conversation began to wind down, "I might know of some opportunities in the tech sector. My company is always looking for talented marketing professionals." Chloe's eyes widened with interest. "Really? What kind of company is it?" "Growing fast, innovative projects, good benefits," James replied, being deliberately vague. "Would you be interested in learning more?" "Absolutely," Chloe said, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. "I'd love to hear about it." James pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. "Let me connect you with our HR department. I'll put in a good word." Growing connections over the following weeks, James became a regular part of Chloe's routine. He would appear at the bookstore during her shifts, browsing the business section while engaging her in conversations about marketing trends and consumer psychology. He visited Brew and Bean on the days when she studied there, always bringing her favorite coffee and asking thoughtful questions about her ideas. Carlos Rivera, James's trusted assistant and longtime friend, watched this developing routine. With growing concern, a sharp-dressed man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and an analytical mind, Carlos had been with Harrison Technologies since its early days. "Sir, with all due respect, this situation with Miss Martinez is becoming complicated," Carlos said during one of their morning briefings in James's penthouse office overlooking the city. James looked up from the financial reports he had been reviewing. "What situation, Carlos?" "Been visiting her workplace almost daily for 3 weeks. You're personally involved in her job search. And she still has no idea who you really are," Carlos said, his tone careful but direct. "That's what happens when she discovers that James from downtown is actually James Harrison, founder and CEO of Harrison Technologies." James set down his papers and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Somewhere down there, Chloe was probably at the bookstore, helping customers and dreaming of a better future. "I've never met anyone like her, Carlos," James said quietly. "In my world, everyone wants something: money, connections, opportunities. But Chloe doesn't even know what I could offer her. She likes me for who I am, not what I have." "And that's exactly why this is dangerous," Carlos replied. "When she finds out you've been deceiving her, she'll feel manipulated, used. You're setting both of you up for heartbreak." James knew his friend was right, but he couldn't bring himself to end what had become the most genuine relationship of his adult life. For the first time since building his empire, he felt like a regular person rather than a target for gold diggers and fortune-seekers, acts of service. Meanwhile, Chloe had begun to notice James's consistent presence in her life. With a mixture of gratitude and curiosity, he seemed to appear whenever she needed a friend most, during frustrating job interviews, difficult days at the bookstore, or moments when the financial pressure felt overwhelming. "He brought you flowers again," Rita observed one evening as Chloe arranged a bouquet of daisies in a mason jar. They were simple flowers, not expensive roses, which somehow made them more meaningful. "He said they reminded him of my smile," Chloe replied. Unable to hide her own smile at the memory, Rita studied her granddaughter's face with the wisdom of 7 decades. "This James sounds like a good man, Mia, but be careful with your heart." "Do you mean men with expensive clothes and expensive watches usually have expensive secrets?" Rita said gently. "Just make sure you know who he really is before you fall too deep." Chloe touched the simple gold watch on James's wrist that she had noticed but never questioned. Rita was right. Everything about James suggested success and wealth far beyond what a typical technology employee might have. But did it matter? He had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. The next day brought unexpected news. The HR department at Harrison Technologies had called to schedule an interview for a marketing coordinator position. Chloe could barely contain her excitement as she shared the news with James over coffee. "They want to meet with me next week," she said, her eyes shining with hope. "I can't believe your recommendation worked so quickly." James felt a stab of guilt at her gratitude. She didn't know that he owned the company, that his recommendation was actually an executive order. or that the HR department was interviewing her as a personal favor to their CEO. "You'll do great," he said sincerely. "Just be yourself."
That's
All anyone could ask for. The weight of secrets as Chloe prepared for her interview at Harrison Technologies. James struggled with the growing complexity of his deception. He had created a situation where the woman he was falling in love with would soon be working for him without knowing his true identity. "This has gone too far," Carlos warned during another morning briefing. "When she walks into that interview, she'll see your photo on the wall, your biography in the company materials. This house of cards is about to collapse." James ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Chloe would have recognized from their first meeting. "I need to tell her the truth. When? After the interview? If she gets the job, I'll explain everything then." Carlos shook his head. "Sir, she's going to feel betrayed. I've been lying to her for a month." "I never lied," James protested. "I just didn't tell her everything." "In a relationship, that's the same thing," Carlos replied bluntly. The interview at Harrison Technologies went perfectly. Chloe impressed the marketing director with her innovative ideas and passionate understanding of consumer engagement. State-of-the-art offices, generous salary offer, and comprehensive benefits package seemed too good to be true. "We'd like to offer you the position," the marketing director said at the end of their meeting. "Can you start Monday?" Chloe accepted immediately, her heart soaring with relief and excitement. Financial stability was finally within reach. She could take care of Rita, pursue her career dreams, and build the future she had always imagined. That evening, she met James at their usual cafe to share the incredible news. "I got the job," she announced, practically glowing with happiness. "I can't believe it. Harrison Technologies, full benefits, salary that's twice what I hoped for. Thank you so much for making this possible." James felt his heart simultaneously soar and sink. Her happiness was everything he had hoped for, but it was built on a foundation of secrets that would soon crumble. "Chloe," he began, knowing he couldn't delay the truth any longer. "There's something I need to tell you about Harrison Technologies, about me." But before he could continue, Chloe's phone rang with an emergency call that would change everything once again. The phone call came at the worst possible moment. Chloe's face went white as she listened to the voice on the other end, her hand trembling as she gripped the device. "What is it?" James asked immediately, seeing her distress. "It's my grandmother," Chloe whispered, ending the call. "She collapsed at the grocery store. They're taking her to General Hospital." Without hesitation, James stood up and took her arm gently. "Come on, I'll drive you there." The ride to the hospital passed in a blur of city lights and anxious silence. James navigated through traffic with the same skill he had shown on their first meeting, while Chloe sat beside him, trying to process what the paramedic had told her. Rita had suffered a heart attack and was being rushed into emergency surgery at the hospital. Chloe paced the waiting room while James sat quietly nearby, offering silent support. Nina arrived within an hour, having closed the coffee shop early. When Chloe called her, "Any news?" Nina asked, wrapping her friend in a tight hug. "She's in surgery," Chloe replied, her voice hollow with worry. "They said it was a major heart attack. The surgeon thinks she needs a triple bypass, but the cost..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. James had been listening from his chair. His heart ached for Chloe's obvious anguish. "What? About insurance?" he asked gently. "Medicare covers some of it, but not everything. The surgeon said we're looking at over $200,000 in medical bills. Even with payment plans, I'll never be able to afford it." Tears finally spilled down Chloe's cheeks. "I just got this amazing job, and it's still not enough to save her." Nina rubbed Chloe's back soothingly. "We'll figure something out. Maybe. The hospital has charity programs, or we could set up a fundraiser." James stood up abruptly. "I'll be right back," he said, stepping out into the hallway to make a phone call. Nina moved closer, recognizing that her friend was on the verge of a breakdown. "Chloe, maybe we should talk about this later when you're not so upset." "I'm upset because I trusted him," Chloe said, her voice breaking. "I thought he cared about me for who I am, not because I was some charity case he wanted to fix." James felt his heart breaking at her words. "You were never a charity case. You saved my morning, remember? You helped me when you had every reason not to, and apparently you've been trying to repay that debt ever since," Chloe replied bitterly. "The job, the coffee dates, the attention, It was all guilt, wasn't it? Before James could respond, a doctor in surgical scrubs approached them. A family of Rita Martinez. Chloe immediately turned to the doctor, her anger temporarily forgotten in the face of more pressing concerns. I'm her granddaughter. How is she? The surgery went well, the doctor said with a reassuring smile. We were able to perform the bypass successfully. She's stable now and should make a full recovery with proper care and rehabilitation. Chloe sank into her chair with relief, the emotional weight of the evening finally overwhelming her. Thank you, doctor. When can I see her? She'll be in recovery for several hours, but you should be able to visit briefly in the morning. Should mention there's been a change in her care plan. She's being transferred to Presbyterian Medical Center for specialized cardiac recovery. All expenses will be covered by an anonymous donation through the Harrison Foundation. Chloe's head snapped up to stare at James, who was studying his hands intently. You did this, she said quietly. The Harrison Foundation helps families facing medical emergencies, James replied without looking up. It's what the foundation exists for. The weight of gratitude and betrayal after the doctor left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the small group. Chloe was torn between overwhelming gratitude for her grandmother's life being saved and deep hurt over James's deception. I need some air, she announced, walking toward the hospital exit. James started to follow her, but Nina placed a hand on his arm. Give her a few minutes, she advised. This is a lot to process. Outside, Chloe stood in the cool night air, trying to sort through her conflicted emotions. On one hand, James had just saved her grandmother's life with his generosity.
On the
other hand, everything she thought she knew about him and their relationship had been built on incomplete truths. When James joined her a few minutes later, she didn't acknowledge his presence at first. I know you're angry, he said softly. You have every right to be. I don't know what I am, Chloe replied, still staring out at the city skyline. Grateful, hurt, confused, overwhelmed. You saved Rita's life tonight, and I'll never be able to repay that. But I also feel like I don't know who you really are. I'm the same person who bought you coffee and listened to your dreams, James. Said I'm the same person who thinks you're brilliant and kind and stronger than anyone should have to be. The money doesn't change who I am inside. Chloe turned to face him. But it changes everything else. The job you got me, the attention you've given me, even this conversation. How do I know what's real and what's just a billionaire playing games with people's lives? Because you know me, James replied with quiet intensity. These past weeks, you've seen who I really am. Not the CEO, not the billionaire. It's James. The man who panicked when his car broke down, who looks forward to coffee conversations, who thinks you're amazing exactly as you are. But you have been the billionaire the whole time, Chloe pointed out. You chose to hide that from me, which means you chose to let me struggle when you could have helped. James ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as his tell when he was frustrated or nervous. I've been used before, Chloe. Women who pretended to care about me, but really just wanted access to my money and lifestyle.
I win.
I met you, for the first time in years. Someone liked me without knowing what I could give them. That felt, he paused, searching for the right words. That felt like everything. A difficult decision the next morning. Rita was awake and alert in her private room at Presbyterian Medical Center. The facility was clearly top-tier, with state-of-the-art equipment and attentive nursing staff that made General Hospital look like a basic clinic. Mia, Rita said weakly as Chloe entered the room. This place is fancy. How are we paying for this? Chloe sat down beside her grandmother's bed, taking her hand gently. A foundation is covering everything. You don't need to worry about money? Right now. What foundation? Rita asked, her eyes sharp, despite her physical weakness. The Harrison Foundation, Chloe replied quietly. Rita studied her granddaughter's face carefully. And does this have anything to do with your James? His last name's Harrison, Chloe admitted. He's the one who arranged everything. Ah, Rita said with understanding. So he has expensive secrets, just like I thought. Abuela, he's a billionaire. He owns the company that just hired me. He's been lying to me for weeks about who he really is. Rita was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. But he saved my life, she said finally. Yes, and he gave you a good job. Yes, in these past weeks as he treated you. Well, with respect and kindness, Chloe nodded, unable to deny James's consistent thoughtfulness and care. Then maybe, Rita said slowly, the question isn't why he didn't tell you about his money. Maybe the question is why you're more upset about the money than grateful for the man.
Hey.
I don't understand what you mean. Rita squeezed her granddaughters hand. Rich or poor, he chose to help you that first morning when his car broke down. Rich or poor, he spent weeks getting to know you as a person. Rich or poor, he saved your old abuela's life last night, eh? The money changes the scale of his generosity, but it doesn't change his heart. But he lied to me. He protected himself, Rita corrected gently. It's like you protected yourself by assuming he was ordinary. Sometimes we don't reveal everything about ourselves until we know it's safe. The grand gesture 2 days later, Chloe returned to her apartment to find an envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten letter from James and a set of keys. Dear Chloe, the letter began. I know I've made mistakes in how I handled our relationship, and I know you need time to decide if you can forgive me. But I wanted you to know that regardless of what you decide about us, some things remain true. Your job at Harrison Technologies is yours because you earned it with your talent and passion, not because of any personal connection. Your grandmother's medical care will continue to be covered because that's what decent people do for each other, not because I expect anything in return. And these keys belong to the apartment upstairs from yours, which I've purchased for Rita's. Recovery. She'll need somewhere quiet and comfortable to heal, and you'll need to be close enough to help her. This isn't about money or obligation. It's about doing what's right for people I care about. If you can find it in your heart to give us another chance, I'll be waiting at the place where we first shared coffee tomorrow at noon. If not, I'll understand, and I'll respect your decision. Either way, you and Rita are taken care of because that's what people do for the ones they love. James. Chloe read the letter 3 times, her emotions cycling through gratitude, frustration, and something that felt dangerously close to love. She climbed the stairs to the apartment above hers and used the keys to open the door. The space was beautiful, a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the park. Modern appliances and everything Rita would need for a comfortable recovery. It was generous without being ostentatious, practical without being impersonal. That evening, Chloe sat with Nina at Brew and Bean, staring at the letter and keys on the table between them. So what are you going to do? Nina asked after hearing the whole story. I don't know, Chloe replied honestly. Part of me feels manipulated, like he used his money to solve problems instead of being honest with me. And the other part remembers how he looked at me during our conversations, how he listened when I talked about my dreams, how he made me feel like the most interesting person in the room. Chloe paused. The other part wonders if maybe Rita is right. Maybe I'm punishing him for having money instead of focusing on what kind of person he is. What does your heart tell you? Nina asked gently. Chloe thought about James's laugh, his genuine interest in her ideas, the way he had driven her to the hospital without being asked. My heart tells me that he's a good man who made some bad choices about honesty. My head tells me that relationships built on secrets don't usually work. But what if Nina suggested this isn't about the foundation being built on secrets? What if this is about 2 people who found something real and now have to decide if it's worth fighting for? The final choice, the next day at noon. Chloe stood outside the cafe where she and James had shared their first real conversation. Through the window, she could see him sitting at the same corner table, staring at his hands while he waited. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. James looked up as she approached, his expression a mixture of hope and resignation. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said as she sat down across from him. I wasn't sure either, Chloe replied honestly. I've been thinking about what you said, about what Rita said, about what I want. And what do you want? Chloe met his eyes directly. I want honesty, complete honesty, even when it's uncomfortable or complicated. You have it, James promised immediately. I want to be sure that you care about me for who I am, not because I'm some project you want to fix. Chloe, you fixed me, remember? That morning when you chose to help instead of protecting yourself, you reminded me that good people still exist. You didn't need fixing. You needed opportunity, and I'm grateful I could provide it. I want to know that if we do this, if we try to build something together, it's as equals. It's not as a billionaire in his charity case. James reached across the table and took her hand gently. You're the strongest, most capable person I know. You built yourself up from nothing. took care of your grandmother, and never lost your kindness despite facing disappointments that would have made others bitter. I don't want to be your savior, Chloe. I want to be your partner. Chloe felt the last walls around her heart begin to crumble. The job at Harrison Technologies is yours regardless of what happens between us personally. Your ideas during the interview were brilliant. The marketing director has been raving about you for days, and Rita's medical care will continue because it's the right thing to do. Not as leverage, not as obligation. Just because family takes care of family. Family. Chloe raised an eyebrow. James smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him since the revelation. I'm hoping that's where we're headed, if you'll have me. A new beginning 6 months later, Chloe stood in her new office at Harrison Technologies, looking out at the city skyline as she reviewed the marketing campaign that had just won a national award. Her innovative approach to consumer engagement had revolutionized the company's brand strategy and earned her a promotion to senior marketing director. James knocked on her doorframe, holding 2 cups of coffee. Busy morning? The best kind? Chloe replied, accepting her caramel macchiato with a grateful smile. The Peterson account just approved our proposal for their product launch. That's my brilliant girlfriend, James said with obvious pride. Ready for lunch with Rita? They had established a weekly tradition of dining with Rita, who had made a full recovery and was now living comfortably in the apartment James had purchased. She had become like a grandmother to James as well, offering wisdom and keeping both of them grounded despite their success. Actually, James said, his voice taking on a nervous quality that Chloe recognized. There's something I want to ask. You first. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, dropping to one knee right there in her office. Chloe Martinez, you changed my life the moment you chose to help a stranger instead of protecting your own interests. You've made me a better man, a better leader, and a better human being. Will you marry me? Chloe looked down at the man who had started as a stranger with car trouble and had become her partner in every sense of the word. Yes, she said without hesitation. But next time you want to propose, maybe don't do it at the office. People will think I only said yes because you're my boss, James laughed as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Let them think what they want. We know the truth. What's that? That sometimes the best things in life start with a broken down car and a kind heart. As they embraced in her office overlooking the city, Chloe reflected on how dramatically her life had changed from that morning when she missed her interview at Sterling Communications. She had lost one opportunity, but gained something infinitely more valuable. A love built on mutual respect, shared values, and the kind of honesty that only comes after working through difficult truths together. Rita was right, as she usually was. Kindness really did open more doors than ambition ever could. Sometimes helping a stranger with a flat tire was just the beginning of the most extraordinary journey of all. Epilogue 1 year later. The Harrison Foundation hosted its annual charity gala in the ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel. Chloe, now Chloe Harrison, stood beside her husband as they welcomed guests to an evening dedicated to providing emergency medical assistance to families in crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, James addressed the crowd from the podium. This foundation exists because my wife taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the difference we make in each other's lives. Chloe smiled from the audience, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, where their first child was growing. Rita sat beside her, elegant in her evening gown and beaming with pride at the family she had helped shape through love and wisdom. 2 years ago, James continued, I thought I understood success. I had built a company, accumulated wealth, and achieved everything I thought I wanted. But I was missing the most important thing of all, someone to share it with who cared more about my character than my bank account. He found Chloe in the audience and smiled. Tonight, we're not just raising money for families facing medical emergencies. We're celebrating the truth that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. Sometimes helping a stranger isn't just the right thing to do. It's the first step toward discovering who you're meant to become. As applause filled the ballroom, Chloe thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a missed job interview to a wedding, from financial struggle to shared purpose, from 2 strangers in a traffic jam to a family building something meaningful together. She had missed her interview at Sterling Communications Because she helped. A stranger, never imagining he was a millionaire. But more importantly, she had gained something far more valuable than any job could ever provide. A love story that began with kindness and would last a lifetime. The end.